But I began to think to myself, as I sat there praying, how many of us have ever felt like the weight of the world was on your shoulders? Have you ever felt overwhelmed by a situation or a circumstance that you find yourself in, and maybe you didn't expect it, or maybe it was more than you expected, and you begin to sweat, or you get anxious, and you wonder what's going on? And then I found myself asking the questions, how many times have you tried to pray, tried to talk with God, but there's no words? You're like so overwhelmed with what you're going through. You're God, I hope you're here in my heart. God, I know you live inside of me, so I know you're experiencing what I'm experiencing, but I can't put into words how I feel or how badly I need you, or I need your help, or I need your comfort, or I need your healing, but I don't have the words, Lord. As someone who has battled depression and anxiety for most of my life, I have felt this way more times than I care to remember. However, I'm here today to talk about it because of that relationship that I have forged and that God has forged within me 40 plus years now. No pun intended, but one day I truly did stand at a crossroads. And there, before me, was a choice. Kind of like if you ever watched The Matrix, you got the red pill and the blue pill, and you're like, okay, Bob, what are you doing? Where are you going? What are you going to take? The red pill or the blue pill? Or maybe you're more the person that sits there at the light and says, okay, do I make a left or do I make a right? Or maybe you're the kind of person that says, okay, it's time to go big or go home. Either way, I reached that place where I knew that something in me needed to change, and that my life was about to change, and I didn't know it was for the worse or the better, but I plunged into my relationship with God with trust and hope. I remember asking myself questions at the time, though. Okay, God, I'm ready to let go, but do I really know you, God? Do I really know you? Sure, I've heard what everybody says about you. I've even read your book, and I know what it says about you. But knowing something about God and knowing God are two different things. Where am I in this? Where are any of us in this? Do I really believe everything that I need to believe about God? I always think of the Indiana Jones moment where he's standing there and he knows his father's dying and he's got to cross this great chasm, but there's no bridge, at least that he sees. But he decides that it's worth the risk. And he does the leap of faith and he finds out that there's something under his feet. You know, we've all heard the sayings of how easy it is to make God into the God that we need, or the God that we need God to be for us. And it's easy to question ourselves or to say, no. We're not creating God in our image, are we? Are we creating a belief and a faith around a God of what we're trying to make him out to be? Or are we really learning about who he is? Because one builds a relationship, the other one doesn't. And I ask myself, when do we ever begin to get to know who you are, God, your character, your heart, what you like and what's pleasing to you? I guess the biggest question there was, how does faith work? What about faith? What about my faith? What about the faith of people that I'm surrounded by? Is it really possible as a person, as a business, as a church, as a father, a teacher? Is it possible to completely trust in you, God, and get up every day with newfound hope and strength, regardless of a circumstance or a situation in my life? Can I live that way? So as I prepared this morning's message, thinking back and processing this crossroads moment for me, I came across what I believe to be one of the most powerful, humbling prayers found in Scripture. It was for me like a fragrance that filled the house whenever my wife made homemade bread. How's that for an illustration? Everybody goes. Can you smell it? A couple of weeks ago, my son and I, we've never been there, but we walked into Mama G's up the street here. Anybody been to Mama G's? Oh, you better go. It's a German bakery. It's been rebought. And you walk in there, and you are just overwhelmed with the smell of fresh baked bread and pastry and coffee brewing in the back. I mean, we walked in the door. You know how you feel when you walk out of air conditioning into the heat, and it just hits you like a wave? That's how it felt like when we opened the door and we walked in. It was like, wow. Kevin's standing there going, do you smell that? I said, yeah, I smell that. You know what I'm talking about. It's intoxicating. It's comforting, isn't it? I miss that. Our lives have gotten so busy, we don't make bread anymore. We promise when we retire, we're going to make bread more. Just so we can sniff it. Of course, with our fantastic physiques, we can't eat it, but we can smell it, right? The interesting thing about it, I was talking to my son about things that I'm wrestling with. I've always shared it with my children so that we get a grip on doing life together. Our motto here, I try to model at home. Dan and I are always talking about difficulties or how about this and how should we look at that and how do we show compassion here and the whole gamut. But whatever we were talking about in that moment that we walked into Mama G's and got hit by that sweet aroma, couldn't remember what we were talking about. I was so overwhelmed that I completely lost track of where I was, and I was caught up in a moment. I was captured by this amazing aroma that surrounded us. Simply a complex fragrance that captured every bit of your thoughts. And that's when the word again came to me. Fixed or fixated. A person or thing that becomes the center of your focus, drawing and directing one's attention to gaze upon intently and maybe even obsessively. This is how I was captured by this simple yet profound prayer found in 2 Chronicles. It was like a sweet wave of aroma that just hit me. King Jehoshaphat, one of Israel's better kings, is overwhelmed. Not one, but 3 forces came together just to overtake them. 3, not 1. 1 would have been bigger than they would have been, but 3? 3 armies joined together and are on their way to him. Can you even imagine that? What does he do? He turns to the people, he gathers them to pray in God's house, and says these words after praising God for who he is and all he has done. He says this to the Lord. Let's read it together. We don't know what to do. There it is. See it right down there? Nor do we know what to do. Say that with me. Sometimes we don't know what to do. Right? Sometimes we don't know what to do. Sometimes we're so overwhelmed we can't find the words to pray. We don't know the words to say to God. I'm struggling with this, or I'm hurting about this. And we can't find the words. Jehoshaphat's having the same problem. We don't know what to do. I'm lost for words. But our eyes are on you. I don't mind telling you, folk, I just sat back in my chair and I had that dread moment. Like, God, you know what? In all my training to be a pastor, we were taught on words and Christian phrasing and all this stuff. And if you've ever been in a room with a bunch of pastors, the prayers can be quite boring. It's so repetitious. Oh, glorious, mighty, precious God. And I read this and it revived me. God, sometimes we don't know what to do, but you do. So our eyes are upon you. What a great prayer! What a simple prayer! A comforting, humbling prayer. Prayer of hope as they put their faith in God. Fixed. That's what they were. Jehoshaphat, as a king, made sure that the people were fixed with their eyes on God. Fixated on God. In a recent letter, a series that I get, it's an e-letter. I get it through my email. Written by Tom Moore. It's titled Rising Leaders Series. I stumbled on this about a month ago. So now once a week I get an email from him. But Tom shares with his readers the life and faith of Abraham Lincoln. You're thinking, where is this going? But as I sat and I read this in the midst of my study, taking a break from studying, checking my email, but he tells the story of Abraham Lincoln, and some of you may or may not know that Abraham Lincoln struggled with depression his whole life. Depression and anxiety his entire life. He was defined by those who knew him with words such as melancholy and pensive, often overwhelmed by continuous sadness. They used to say that his very nature about him as he walked around was to carry. You could see him physically carrying a sadness or a depression, however you want to say it. But despite his battle with depression, Lincoln, who was one of America's greatest presidents, and I said that intentionally because Jehoshaphat was one of Israel's greatest leaders, greater kings. And here we have Abraham Lincoln, one of America's greatest presidents. You start to see a parallel? Brought our nation through one of its darkest hours. In 1860, right before he planned a debate, Lincoln was reported to be wearing a woe-begone look. Everybody noticed it, especially the people that knew him, could see how bad he was down. And he's preparing this incredible debate. However, when it came time for him to speak, this haggard composure was gone, replaced by the passions of his convictions, and he went on to capture and captivate the crowd that had formed in New York City. As I read his story, what I couldn't help to think about was how parallel it appeared to be, even to the world that we live in today. The rising tensions, the racial conflicts, the hatred, the pursuit of power and control. It's not just in the world, it's in everything in the world. Everything in the world is tainted by the desire for power and control. And everything in the world has this tension and even battles, racial conflicts and hatred. So I said this, you ever get to the point where, again, you're overwhelmed? I just sat back in my chair, I put my feet up on the bar where my desk is, and I just took a deep breath. And I said, Lord, is this what you're trying to show me? Has it gotten so bad that everything is infected? Everything? Are you depressed, Lord? I don't think it would be far stretched to compare his story to our text either. Judah, under the leadership of Jehoshaphat, is about to become slaves or possibly destroyed. That just as Lincoln turned to faith in God by saying, let us have faith that right makes might, Jehoshaphat addressed his people to fix their eyes on God. And like the fresh bread experience, the Bible speaks to us saying that we are an aroma to Christ. 2 Corinthians 2:15, we are an aroma of Christ. In Philippians 4, Paul is thankful for the faithfulness of the church. And he calls their faithfulness a fragrant aroma. In biblical times when they built the church, as we read about in the New Testament, no church stood alone. There was no huge mega church going on in the right corner while the church in the middle, the church to the left had to do without or struggle or even risk closing. Paul said, God forbid I have to come and ask you to help your brothers and sisters in Christ, for we're all sharing the gospel. Paul called it being a fragrant aroma. Ephesians 5, Paul reminds us that our offerings and sacrifices to God are given as a fragrant aroma. Ezekiel 20, as God talks about the gathering of his people who have worshipped idols and false gods, he says, I will gather you, and I will accept you as fragrant incense. The New Revised Standard Version says as a soothing aroma. This is who we are to God. So I ask the question again, God, are you depressed? This has been going on since the book of Genesis. And as we read about it, it continues to the book of Revelations, where we keep forgetting how much we're loved and how special we are. And we keep pursuing the things of the world instead of this relationship with God. And God says, I will continue to do for you because you are a fragrant aroma. You are a soothing aroma to me. I believe that probably the greatest point that we need to see in all this is that as we fix our eyes on God, we're meant to see that his eyes have always been fixed on us. Always. We look for God to fix everything that's broken in our life. We look for God to do everything that we hear on radios and other preachers say of what we're entitled to because we're the children of God. But if you don't ever get to know God, you'll never ask the question, God, are you depressed? Are you saddened by your people who only seek what you have in your hand and never to just hold it? I don't know about you, but I want to hold the hand of God. I'm no longer interested in what he can do for me. I'm trying to understand and wrap my head around what he's already done for me. As we've said before, when he hung on the cross and that veil was torn, that was not for us to be able to have everything, but for God to get to us. Because we are a soothing aroma to him. Jehoshaphat, in his humility and honesty, before God prayed. No fancy words. We just don't know what to do. But our eyes are on you, fixed. By faith, Lincoln challenged people to do the right thing by faith. Me? I couldn't stop thinking about the smell of fresh bread. And I believe that as I look to God, as I trust in God, and put all my hope in God, as I pursue to do the things that I believe he wants me to do, as I seek his righteousness, that one day maybe I will smell like fresh bread to God. We talk about the great Christian saying that we can't wait to get to heaven to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. Last night as I finished this sermon up, I said to God, you know what? Right now I desire when I get to heaven and I meet you face to face, I want you to say, Bob, you smell like fresh bread. That's what I want. Because I want to be soothing aroma to you. I don't want to say, Lord, I faithfully took everything you said you made for me and gave to me. Your pastor wants to smell like fresh bread. And I invite you to join me in that quest. If you mean it right now, say, Lord, make me smell like fresh bread. Go ahead, I dare you. Sounds funny to say, but you know what? That means everybody you're around is going to smell what you smell. You know, that pastor smells like fresh bread. You know, Chris smells like fresh bread. You know, there was a day that people came to Christ because of how we appeared. We go through a struggle and we trust God in that struggle. When people say, I don't know how you do it. What do you have that's so special? I want what you have. You ever heard that? I want what you have. Millions, if not billions of people have come to Christ since the beginning based on that fact. They came out to see Jesus in the thousands because of what they heard. Let me experience it for myself. I want what you have. I think in the 21st century, we need to change the way we smell. Because we've been so much after the things of the world that we have forgotten who we are in Christ. And so I invite you in your prayer life at home to say to God, make me smell glorious to you. Let's bow our heads.